Hey there, folks. Calvin Hutton here, bringing you another edition of Sustainable Sedition Radio. Today, we've got episode 9, choosing preparedness over anxiety. Now, this is a topic that I'm really stoked to talk to you guys about. We've had some interesting developments over here in my neck of the woods over the past week since we last spoke. And no, the baby's not here yet, but we're a week closer to that due date than we were last week. And she is feeling just that much more pregnant. She's absolutely rocking through it. She's doing great, doing all the exercises that she needs to, loosen her hips and get ready for labor. And I'm just doing my best to support her and make sure that we're prepared. And that's kind of what is inspiring today's episode. Not necessarily the labor aspect of it, although the situation that we're in, it ties into today's topic perfectly because it forces us, living an hour away from the nearest hospital kind of forces us to have a backup plan. Our original plan is to, our preferred plan, I should say, is to make it to the hospital when she starts going into labor. She labored most of the way at home last time with Bjorn when she gave birth to him, and then we were only at the hospital for the last 5 hours, and we were in and out just like that. But this time it's a little bit different just because we're so far away. If anything goes wrong, then we don't want to be driving in the car and have her giving birth in the middle of the freeway. So we're kind of having to brush up a little bit on some stuff that I've never really delved into before, like what it's going to look like if we have to have a home birth. What if she goes into labor and we realize we forgot to put gas in the car, or there's a forest fire, which we're in fire season right now, and the freeway's blocked, we can't get to town. So those are all things to consider. And today's topic, we're going to be going into how to start planning, how to start preparing, because man, we're living in some crazy times, guys. It seems like every single day we're just bombarded with the latest crisis or all kinds of crazy shit that's going on. And so today we're just going to be talking about what it means to actually get involved with a preparedness lifestyle and start moving away from just, being someone who just floats through life, just kind of consuming, going with the flow, and into someone who actively starts taking part in taking the reins of your own destiny and of the direction of your life. So we're going to kind of hit some preparedness fundamentals today, some basics, and this is a great episode for both seasoned preppers, who are looking for ways to maybe explain why this isn't just a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing insanity to someone who is, just waking up and just starting to get it, but, is maybe not all the way there yet. And it's also going to be a great episode for those of us who are just getting into this space and looking out there at all the craziness and just like, holy shit, I'm so overwhelmed and I've got no idea where to begin. And today, I'm hoping to give you guys some really solid starting points that have definitely helped make a serious impact in my life, personally, and that I hope can make an impact in yours too. It's easy to look out there and just think that the world is ending, that everything's going off the rails and we're all screwed and it's doomsday and, oh my God, I got to get off the grid right now. But here's the thing. There are two main bad ways to go about prepping. There's a lot of really great ways to start, but there are two ways that pretty much guarantee failure. Number one is you start waking up and you get all panicked and you go out and you rack up $5,000 in credit card debt, filling your pantry with a bunch of canned goods and ammo and shit that you don't need right now and that you don't eat, and tools and gear that you don't know how to use, right? Which is understandable. I mean, I get why somebody would do that. I've done that myself. I've known other people who have definitely gone down that rabbit hole. And the problem with that is that not only did you rack up a bunch of debt, which is like the opposite of preparedness, but now you have a bunch of shit that you've got stuffed away in a closet that you're not going to use, you don't know how to use, you don't even like to eat. And when the crisis blows over, if it's not the end of the world, then here you are sitting on this pile of crap that's going bad because you're not using it. You don't know what to do with it. And it's a lot easier at that point to kind of be like, oh man, I went off the rails last time. There was whispers of some emergency, and it didn't pan out the way that I thought it was going to. I wasted a bunch of money. I'm sitting on crap that I don't need, and I'm not going to do that again. Which is great. Learn from your own lesson, but you can't be like an ostrich and go stick your head back in the sand, and that's unfortunately what happens. The next worst thing that you can do is to ignore the threat and just hope that everything's going to be fine. Or get overwhelmed and not take action. Have too much faith in the cycle of collapse and then reconstitution, and that things are going to get better. Because I'll tell you what, guys, hope is not a plan. You got hope and a quarter, that'll get you 25 cents. It's not a way to go about doing anything. So you got to be strategic. And the most effective strategy that there is to keep doing the things that continue to benefit your life every day while slowly taking small steps to prepare. So I'm going to kind of break down those beginning steps, right? And I'm going to break it down from kind of a systems thinking permaculture perspective. And what I mean by that is I'm going to come at it in zones, right? So in permaculture, we organize our systems into zones, right? So think about like your zone 0 would be yourself, your person, your the inside of your house, right? Then your zone 1 would be like your closest garden beds. Maybe you've got some quail on the side of the house. Maybe you've got some rabbits. Maybe you've got some kind of aquaponics system set up. It's the food production systems that are the most labor intensive, the ones that you're going to be visiting every single day. That's your zone 1. Then your zone 2 is a little bit farther out beyond that. Maybe that's where you've got your if you're growing a shit ton of corn, maybe that's where you've got your corn. Maybe that's where you're running, some sheep or tractoring chickens in like a pasture tractor situation, if that's what you're doing. And whatever it is you're doing, your zone 2 is like the expanded but less labor intensive version of your zone 1. And it kind of goes on and on all the way up to zone 5, which is pure wilderness, and you don't really touch that other than to go out there and learn. So if we're looking at preparedness like zones, your zone 0, as it is with permaculture, would be yourself, your own mindset, how you behave, how you think, the skills that you learn. And the first most important skill that you can learn that's going to make the biggest, most immediate difference in your life is to have situational awareness. So that means, when you're out in public and going about your life on the daily, take your headphones out. Don't be scrolling on your phone while you're crossing the street. Pay attention. Because when you're not paying attention, you make yourself just that much more vulnerable. And we're fragile creatures. We're pretty tough and resilient, but at the same time, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time or you're not paying attention and there's something going on, you can get yourself into some serious trouble. You can end up dead. And there's all kinds of stuff like when you're driving, we're rocketing around in these metal cans going, 65 miles an hour all day. That's incredibly dangerous. We don't even think about it. There are so many people who die in car accidents, and so it's just really making sure that you're being aware of your surroundings. You're learning how to read what's normal in a social setting. so that you can identify what's not normal. Start thinking about, like, let's say you're out at a restaurant with your wife and somebody comes in and just starts shooting, or you're at a gas station and somebody comes and tries to hold up the place. It's like, what's your plan? What are you going to do? Have you taken a second to, like, spot the exits? Have you taken a second to, like, see where there could be cover? What are you going to, if you're with your kids, what are you going to, how are you going to direct them in a situation like that? And it's not being paranoid. It's just being responsible for yourself and for the people that depend on you. Those are the things that we really got to think about. And you don't have to be, Jason Bourne or something, but it's just taking a second, slowing down, right? And being aware of your surroundings. So that's the first step in all of this, preparedness, right? And it's kind of the same thing as if, like, you were lost in the woods. The first thing that you are going to do, which most people don't do in that situation, is you got to stop moving. You got to chill out. You got to breathe, lower your heart rate, level with yourself, ground yourself, and then start to, backtrack. Try to see if you can identify your way back to where you started, and you can start to find your way back. The majority of people just keep going, and they'll go faster and faster as they start to panic, or they just pretend that they're not lost, and they stick their head in the sand, and they think that everything's gonna be fine because they don't want to acknowledge that something's wrong, right? So first thing you got to do, slow down, pay attention, take inventory of what you've got. How much food do you actually have in your kitchen or in your pantry? What kinds of tools do you carry with you on a daily basis that would be good for what kind of scenario? And that's going to bring us into our next point after your mindset and after the situational awareness is EDC, which stands for everyday carry. And this isn't, some days carry. This is every single day. This is stuff that you got on you all the time. Like me, I always have a Leatherman on me, right? It's a little multi-tool. It's got, pliers that fold out. It's got scissors. It's got a little knife. It's got a little serrated saw. It's got a file. It's got a Phillips head screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver and a bottle opener. And it's a really cool tool. And I tell you what, man, I use this thing probably 50 times a day for different things, right? The next thing is I never, ever, ever leave my house without my knife. And I've got like a standard Marine Corps issue K-bar that's hanging on my belt. I always have it with me. And it's not just for, self-defense if it came to that. I mean, yes, of course, that's part of it. And I mean, having a huge knife on my side is definitely like a deterrent. Like, if somebody's going to, pass me over instead of the defenseless old lady, let's say that, Another thing is I always have some pepper spray because, I don't want to hurt anybody. If somebody's being an asshole and is, getting in my face or getting in my wife's face and, I can't de-escalate the situation with words, then I'm not going to stab him. I'm not going to shoot him, but I'm going to damn sure pepper spray his ass, So that's the things that you want to think about. Do you have a lighter? What if you got lost in the woods and it was cold? Do you have a way to start fire? If you were lost somewhere in the dark or your car broke down on the freeway, do you have a flashlight so that you can go and check out the engine? Do you have a headlamp? Do you know how to use those tools? Do you know how to use your knife? Do you know how to use a screwdriver, for God's sakes? And so that's going to bring us into our next section of your Zone Zero, which is learning basic skills. And I'm talking like handyman skills, too, in addition to, self-defense and situational awareness. I'm talking plumbing, right? I'm talking mechanical. Like, do you know how to change your oil? Do you know how to swap out the starter in your vehicle if you needed to? Do you know how to frame out a shelf? These are like basic things that we've just lost touch with because there's a guy that we can call for everything nowadays. We don't need to. We don't have the need to learn and maintain these skills. But being able to do that and not depend on someone else to come and, save your ass in a situation that's gone sideways is going to make all the difference. Especially in a scenario where maybe there is some emergency and you need to be able to fix something. You need to be able to get your car going again. So yeah, you're all of the tools, all of the weapons, all of, whatever it is that you want to carry on yourself on the daily, it's of no use to you whatsoever if you don't have the skills to use it. So the next thing is you're going to want to carry a bug out bag of some kind. And what that really means is that's a 72-hour pack, right? It's a backpack. It's a standard backpack. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need to go out and spend a bunch of money on some, tactical, bulletproof backpack, But it's something that you need to be able to fit 3 days of food. That's 2,000 calories a day, right? A change of clothes, at least 2 changes of clothes. A few pairs of socks, right? A method to start fire. Some way to communicate. Some way to charge your phone, like a little solar charger or something. If you're out lost and you can't charge it in your car or whatever. So a pair of shoes if you can fit them in there. And some water, right? And that's just the most basic bug out bag. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one of the most important parts. You definitely want to keep some kind of a medical kit in there, and not just your shitty standardized, first aid kit that you get from CVS that has, it's 120 pieces and 99 of them are Band-Aids. That's not going to do you any good. You can get that, you can start with that, but add some Tylenol, add some herbal salves, add some sutures, add some butterfly stitches, right? Add a tourniquet, right? You want to really start being able to kind of have all your bases covered. So you can just grab that fucking bag and you can go. And you know what? It doesn't do you any good if you leave it at home. So leave it in your car. Take it to work with you. Take it back home with you. Take it when you go out to, hike in the woods with your family. Who knows what's going to happen? Take it camping. It's God forbid, your kid cuts his fucking thumb off with an axe. And now you've got a medical emergency on your hands. And you have to be able to, A, know the skills, basic medical skills, and have the equipment and the tools to be able to help in that situation and be able to take care of your family or yourself. So now we're going to get into zone 1. And zone 1 is going to be your home, right? Your home base. So the first thing on that list is going to be water, right? That is the one thing that we cannot live without for more than a few days. And the hotter that it is and the more intensive your work is, the less time you can go without water. So you're going to want to start with an absolute minimum putting water away. 1 gallon per person per day. You can measure, how many days you have by that metric, right? 1 gallon per person per day. And, if you don't have the money to go buy a bunch of 5-gallon water jugs, save your empty water bottles. Fill them up. Have a stash of them in a closet somewhere. Or under your bed or wherever it is you keep your prep stuff, right? Another great thing, too, is to have some kind of water filtration system, right? So that if you can't go to the store and you don't want to drink, shitty tap water, get yourself a nice, Berkey filter, right? Something that you can use to clean the flowing water that's coming into your house. And definitely have a backup plan for if, let's say you lose your job and you can't pay the water bill, the water gets shut off. What are you going to do? These are questions to ask yourself. And I don't have the time today to go into every single possible thing that you can do for each one of these categories, but this is really just the fundamentals, to get you thinking, right? So the next thing is going to be food, right? This is absolutely imperative. You got to have some kind of food stashed away. Most people are living, hand to mouth, right? They go to the grocery store every couple days, and I'm guilty of it myself. I've had serious periods in my life where that's how it was, and it's like if something happened and you couldn't get to the store, or like how it was for me during COVID, which was a huge wake-up call, you go in and the shelves are bare. You can't get what you need. It's like, oh shit, how am I gonna cook dinner? And maybe you've only got like a few days of food at your house. You're in big trouble. There's stuff, and I'm not just talking about like end of the world stuff here. I'm talking about practical, localized emergencies. The most localized you can get is the loss of a job. So many people have no backup plan whatsoever if they lose their job. They're completely dependent on that income. What are you going to do if you get hurt? You break your leg and you can't work. What if you get in a car accident? Now you're paralyzed from the neck down and you can't work. You've got a wife and a kids who are depending on you. You got to think about these things. So, and then then up a level from that, it's like, what if there's a house fire? What if there's a localized emergency in your neighborhood? What if there's civil unrest and you don't? It's not safe to leave. What if there's an earthquake and you're stuck? You can't go to the grocery store. The roads are fucked up. You can't drive on them. You got to be able to maintain in your own house without leaving for at least 30 to 90 days. That is the bare minimum. And you don't have to go do it all at once, like we said in the beginning. The threat was there yesterday. The threat's going to be there tomorrow. Start preparing today. So, back into our food preparedness. Sorry, I kind of went off on a little side tangent there. The best way to do that is to start building that with what's called a rotational stock pantry. And what you're doing is you're creating your own grocery store in your home, right? So the first step in this is you're going to get a notebook and start logging every single thing that you eat for a month, for a whole month. Every single thing. Whether it's a can of beans, whether it's fruit, whether it's an elaborate meal that has 15 different ingredients. Write down every single one of those ingredients, right? And as you're going, take a highlighter and highlight or put a little check mark next to all of the ingredients or items on that list that are shelf stable, that can be stored on a shelf, right? Now at the end of that month, you go through and you look at all of your highlighted items, and that's what you focus on stocking first. Maybe you don't eat a lot of beans. Maybe you don't eat a lot of tuna fish. What are the shelf-stable things or things that you can get canned and substitute, fresh ingredients for canned, preserved ingredients, right? What are those things that you actually eat? Because so many people, they freak out and they'll go and buy, 100 pounds of lentils, and they hate lentils. And now, God forbid, you're stuck in a situation where that's all you've got. You're going to be miserable. So buy the things that you eat. So that's the point of this list, is to help you determine what exactly are the things that are part of your diet that you're going to enjoy eating every day, that your kids enjoy eating, that your spouse enjoys eating, and focus on those. Because having the stuff that you like in a crisis, it's going to boost morale. It's going to be, it's the difference between having a like rice and beans survival meal when the power's out, or, having stuff that you actually enjoy and making the best out of it. So now that you have your list of shelf-stable items, and and the other stuff too, make sure, I don't know what your freezer situation is, but if you can, try to get yourself a deep freezer. And all the stuff that isn't shelf-stable, the things that you eat multiple times a week or multiple times a month, maybe give them a little star or something, right? That's different from your highlighted shelf-stable foods, and start building up a stock of those. for your freezer, right? Maybe get yourself a pressure canner. And there are so many ways that you can preserve things that you can't really get in canned foods, right? Or maybe you can, but they're just not as high quality as when you pressure can something yourself or you preserve it yourself, right? So your next step is going to be, every time you go to the grocery store, you're buying these things anyway, right? And instead of getting, 1 or 2 cans or 1 or 2 boxes or whatever, grab 3 or 4. Grab a couple extra. You don't need to go off the rails and buy 15 cans of pinto beans all at once. But get however many extra that it makes sense for you without putting a hole in your wallet that you can afford. And start slowly stocking up. And now what you're going to do is you're going to rotate it. You're going to rotate the stock. Just like how they do at a grocery store, They get a shipment of strawberries in, and the oldest strawberries come to the front, so people get those, and the newest strawberries go to the back, and they keep rotating them, right? They pull from the oldest, and they restock with the newest in the back. And you're going to do that same system with your pantry. And, designate some area of your house to do this. You don't need like a full walk-in closet or some elaborate setup. Build yourself a little bookshelf. Use a cupboard. Use whatever you've got. Just have some kind of designated area that's for your emergency food pantry. And use it. Keep that rotation going. That way you're never having stuff that's been sitting in there for 5 fucking years and it's going bad. And now there's an emergency, and now you have to, make the decision between, are my kids going to starve, or am I going to risk botulism by eating these 6-year-old beans, So that's the logic there, right? Start with 1 week of food. You got to start with 1 week if you want to get to a month, You got to start with 2 weeks if you want to get to 2 months. You got to start with 2 months if you want to get to 3. And that's how you do it. Slow, steady. Buy the things that you use the things that you buy, and keep slowly building that stock so that it makes sense. Right? All right, next. Energy. What are you going to do if the power goes out? Right? Do you have some kind of alternative heating source? Do you have some alternative to cook your food? Do you have a little gas grill? Do you have a charcoal grill? Do you have a campfire with a grate over the top of it in the backyard? These are all things to think about. How are you going to heat your home? Do you have some kind of fireplace? If you do you have firewood? Do you have some kind of a solar charger to keep your phone on and your laptop on? Right? Do you have some kind of a backup generator or a solar generator, right? Which is really just a big, giant solar battery. It's all things to think about. And again, you don't have to drop $1 million on something right away, but it's definitely something to think about whenever you can. Maybe you've got a neighbor who's got a generator, who you can come up with some agreement with him, hey, if something goes down, build a relationship with the guy, help him out so he's more inclined to help you out. And hey, the power's out. Can I run an extension cord from your generator? 9 times out of 10, most people would be happy to help. Especially if you exchange some kind of value with them, right? So the next, but possibly the most important, right? Obviously food and water, clothing, shelter, those are all incredibly important. But so are your finances. You've got to have at least a 60 to 90 day emergency cash fund somewhere in your house, whether it's in a lockbox, or a safe or a drawer. Just make sure it's somewhere that's safe and hidden and not obvious, right? The more you can lock it up, the better. Now, I know that seems kind of daunting, right? Some of us, our living expenses are crazy. Some of us, our living expenses are maybe a couple $100 less than our actual income, or maybe they're like, we're just barely breaking even. and we're only making as much as we spend. Right? First of all, that's an issue you got to fix. And second of all, I know how it is, dude. And this is, again, don't get overwhelmed by this. We're going to come at this from the same slow, pragmatic, systematized strategy that we came at the food storage with, right? So the first thing you're going to do here is you're going to get another journal, and you're going to keep track of all of your spending and all of your income for an entire month. If you have a fixed income, right? If you've got a salary, or you work a certain set of hours every month, and you can predict how much money you're going to be bringing in that month, great, that's awesome. Me, I'm self-employed. I run a handyman service, so my income is different every single month. Sometimes I do really great, sometimes I do not so great. Sometimes work is slow. Handyman work is also seasonal. So keeping track of every single chunk of cash that I get from any job is a huge part of this for me. And then, so what you're going to do is you're going to keep track of all your expenses, all of your spending, and all of your income. And at the end of each month, you're going to find the difference, and you're going to average it out across a year or something, right? You don't have to journal for an entire year. It's just if 1 month for you looks like every other month, then great. For me, I have to go at it more long term, because every month looks different financially, income wise. Find that difference and try and save as much of it as you possibly can. Right? For me, I can swing putting away about 10% of all my income every month. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but it usually averages out to about 10%. And I take that 10% and I'm going to put 90% of that 10% into my emergency cash fund. And then I'm going to take 10% of that 90%, whatever's left over, and I'm going to invest it into hard assets like Bitcoin, like silver, like ammunition, right? Like seeds, like stuff that can be bartered in an emergency situation. Stuff that you can trade and will hold and retain its value when the dollar's lost its value, which is happening. And also, in a real emergency situation, it's you can't fucking eat a dollar bill. You can eat some seeds if you had to. You can eat food. And then there are the other items, right? Stuff that maybe the alphabet boys don't need to know about, and you can kind of infer what I mean by that. That's all going to barter incredibly well in an emergency when people are looking for more value than just and more security than what a dollar bill can offer. So again, start small, dude. Start small with your finances, but do it. You want to have at least $1,000 in your emergency fund. 3 to 5 is even better, but you want to have 90 days of expenses put away. At least. If you can do 6 months, fantastic. If you can do a year, even better. And I know that for a lot of us it sounds overwhelming, but you eat an elephant one bite at a time. I know you can find a way to save $10 this month. Even if it means you got to cut some stuff out. Find that money. Free it up and put it away. And you will thank yourself later when, there is a situation where you do lose your job, and you have a cushion, some kind of a buffer, so that, again, you don't go max out your credit cards on food and gas until you find a new job, and then you spend the first year or 6 months of working at your new job paying off the debt the debt hole that you dug yourself into. You don't want to do that. It's counterproductive to everything that we're doing. The next is you want to eliminate the debt that you have now. And the strategy, I have usually been pretty good But I know a lot of people who have gotten themselves really bad into debt, and the best method that I have found to get myself out when I've been there is Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, right? Yeah, I don't have time today to go into all of the nitty-gritty of that, but basically you are going to start with your smallest debt, right? Pay it off. And then take, while making the minimum payments on all the other ones, right? And then you're going to take once your smallest one is paid off, you're going to take all the money that you were putting into that and put it into the next biggest one, right? And you're going to continue doing that. And by the time you get to your biggest debt, you have a ton of money to put into it, or you have all of the compounding money from all of the other debts that you had just finished paying off going towards the next biggest debt. That's the way to go about it. So, it might take you a year. It might take you 4 years, and it's scary as fuck, but the best time to start on that is yesterday, dude. The worst position you could be in when shit goes south is in terrible debt. So the next thing you're going to want to do in your zone 1 is you're going to have a documentation package, right? And by that, I mean a binder with copies of all of your important documents, your social security, your birth certificate, any ID information, your checking and your routing number, right? And a list of all of your contacts, every single contact that you would want to communicate with if, the phone lines were down and you couldn't get a hold of them. And, phone numbers aren't enough. You got to have addresses, get every way to contact them on that piece of paper, right? On that list. As for the bank numbers and social security and stuff, if you're like the type of person who's, worried about somebody finding and getting a hold of this binder and like stealing your identity or something, you can use a basic, what's called a +2 encryption, where it works like this. Let's say that the first 4 digits of your social security number or your routing, your bank routing number are 777, right? So a +2 encryption, you would just add +2 to each of those numbers. So 777 would become 999, right? Super simple. And then and make sure that you communicate that that encryption to your wife, to your kids, to your close family members, whoever you're going to be partnered with in a situation where you actually need to break out this binder. Make sure that you have a plan with your family and that you guys are all on the same page. Now next, you got to have some kind of evacuation plan, right? What are you going to do if there's a tornado and you got to get the hell out, or there's a hurricane, or there's an earthquake, or there's civil unrest in your area? It's trickled into your spot, and you know what? You just think, hey, I've got kids. It's better for me to just get the hell out, just in case shit goes sideways. Do you have a plan? Do you have a list of hotels that you can call? That would be in your documentation package, right? Do you have at least 3 locations that you can go to if you needed to get out? Whether that's staying with a family member or a hotel, or maybe you have like a bug out property. Maybe you're fortunate enough to have something like that going on. And then if you have all 3 of those, do you have 3 different routes to each of them? What if the highway's blocked off? What if there's traffic and you just got to get there? So all things to think about. Now, zone 3, that's going to be your extended home and your community. Number one thing you can start doing here is to start growing and producing your own food. Now, this is going to not only be good for you mentally and emotionally and spiritually, but it's also going to be better for you physically. Because the more food that you grow and that you learn how to preserve, the more of a the more you lift some of your financial burden of having to go out and buy canned stuff, or, buy your food preps. If you can be producing it yourself, man, you're in good shape. The more of it you can produce, the better shape you're going to be in any kind of a scenario, right? At the same time, the food itself is going to be much higher quality than anything that you're going to buy at the store. So it's healthier for you. And one day, unless you're a multi-billionaire and you've got a nuclear bunker that you're going to go to with a decade worth of food prep, then one day in a long-term emergency, eventually your food preps are going to run out. Your stash is going to run out, and you got to be able to have some way to feed yourself and your family. So growing your food is going to be huge, absolutely huge for that. I know not everybody's in a situation where they're able to do that, but even just something as simple as microgreens, even something as simple as canning or pickling a bunch of cucumbers that you got on sale at the grocery store or at the farmer's market that'll last you now a year out of a handful of cucumbers that would have gone bad in a month, or less than that, a few days, a week. Finding little ways to do that, it's going to make a huge difference. So next, have agreements in place with your neighbors. Build real relationships with people. Find people locally who are on the same page, who you guys have the same type of mindset about this shit. Have an emergency, and they're, most of the time they're probably not going to be your neighbors, but go on forums. Find people online that are relatively close to you that you guys see eye to eye. Now, at least on this type of stuff. Maybe not everything, because everybody's got a different perspective. Nobody's going to see eye to eye on everything, but this is like a core lifestyle design function here. And if you guys can agree on preparedness, on freedom, and on homesteading, and on that type of thing, man, you're in pretty good shape. And you're both going to be much more inclined to work together and to build some kind of an emergency pact, right? Learn to barter, trade eggs for labor, build these relationships, help people. And the more that you help others, the more that they're going to want to help you when shit goes sideways. Start building those relationships now, because if and when the day comes where shit does go sideways, that is going to be the worst time ever to try and build these relationships, because, man, everybody's going to be on edge. And the last thing that a smart person is going to want to do is trust a newcomer right off the bat. So start now. So that's it for our zones. And again, guys, this is just the absolute basics. These are just the fundamentals, right? This is just a way to start. It's just a starting point, and there's so much more that you can do. We could spend an entire hour and a half talking just about bug out bags, or just about, coming up with an evacuation plan for your family, or how to put together your documentation package. We could do an entire episode on each of those things. And you know what? I am so greatly looking forward to being able to do that for you guys. I really, truly am. Because like I said, right now, where I'm at, I'm in a pretty good situation. We're off the grid. If something went wrong, we're in a situation where we're not going to be as vulnerable as like somebody who's living in the city, right? And it took us a long time to get there. I spent plenty of years living in the city, freaking out, doing my best to be prepared, having a little food pantry, having, a little stash of cash, this and that. And, but after years of living this lifestyle and getting myself slowly into better and better situations, now we're in definitely a more ideal situation for that kind of thing. At the same time, though, we're out here. We're isolated. There's not a lot of, there are folks who live up here, and there's a pretty tight-knit community who, we band together to clear the roads in a winter storm, or if there's a tree that fell and nobody can get out of their property. Everybody, all the folks up here are really good about, just working together and communicating when shit goes wrong. We live in a serious, forest fire risk area. So when it's fire season, which it is right now, we woke up yesterday to just like thick smoke. And there's like 5,000 acre fire about 40 miles northeast of us. So it's those little things that make this situation. There's no situation that is without risk. There's always shit that can go wrong. And if you aren't taking the steps to build those connections with your neighbors, to make sure that you have what you need, to make sure that you can plan to stay in your house and, have no income for, 30 to 90 days. Make sure you've got systems of redundancy in place so that if something goes wrong, if one of your plans fails, you've got a backup. You've got like a default mode, that you can default on and make sure that yourself and the people that depend on you are cared for and that you guys have what you need. So again, I'm really looking forward to. I love this stuff, man. I'm fired up about it. I've been really getting serious about it again. Just with having my third kid, man. That's really what it is. It's like I know there's always crisis. There's always headlines and stuff to freak out about. And it's less that, and it's more like, okay, I need to get on my shit as a father and like as a husband and as a grown-ass man. I really need to get on my P's and Q's here. I've got a couple of firearms. I'm like out there training. I'm learning how to really use them and make sure that I can use them for whatever I need them for, whether that's bringing home a deer or whether that's, God forbid, if it ever came down to it, ending up in a self-defense situation. I need to be ready for that kind of thing. Stacking up on our food preps, stacking some cash on the side so that, I can be in this situation like I'm in right now to where I don't have to leave my lady home alone with a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old postpartum with a newborn. I can take time off for those first 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long it's going to be. I'm not sure yet. But, I've got about 3 months of living expenses put away. It took me a long time to get there. It really did. And I'm not like where I want to be by any means. I'm not like the paragon of preparedness by any means at all. But I've been taking those steps, and it gets rid of that anxiety. The best way to combat the anxiety that we're bombarded with from every angle is taking small steps of positive, affirmative action. And that's really going to make the biggest difference because it's going to boost your morale. It's going to make you feel like you're doing something. And it's actually going to be doing something. It might not look like it at first when you've got, 10 cans of beans and some tuna in your pantry, but it's like you keep adding to that. It's not going to look like much when you've only got $25 put away in your drawer, but you keep adding to it. And eventually, you'll look in that drawer, and yeah, there's going to be a couple grand. You're going to have, 8 weeks worth of good food that you actually enjoy eating, that your kids are actually going to eat. And it's not going to be a goddamn stressful battle trying to get them to just choke down dry rice and beans. And it's those little things matter. What you do matters, and what you do has an impact. So make sure that we're having the right impact. Make sure that we're taking those steps. So in the meantime, while I'm going through these next few months of these shorter episodes and of having very, very little preparedness, ironically, for the structure of these episodes, I want to, because I'm stoked to get into like the nitty gritty and like, have an hour and a half long episode on just like food prep or just self-defense or just firearms or, what I mean? Just all the different subcategories and really, really get into it with you guys. But right now I have other priorities. So we'll get there. But for now, this is what I got. And in the meantime, if you're waking up and if you're like, man, this is overwhelming and I really want to start taking steps, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to get organized. I've got a couple of awesome sources for you guys that I've used or that friends and family members have used to help them start and organize their journey towards more preparedness in their lives. And number one, go check out provisionplanner.com, right? And this is an awesome site, and it's a calculator. It's, you got to pay a fee one time, but then you have it for life and you can use it offline. So, and it is a calculator for provisions based on calories per person, the number of people, your lifestyle, how active you are, etc., right? And it's just gonna, instead of trying to sit there and do all that math yourself, like, oh man, I got a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm almost 30 and my lady's 28. It's like, instead of trying to figure out exactly how much you guys are gonna need per person per day, you just plug in that information and it helps you calculate what to get, and it helps you calculate a plan based on what your needs, based on your preferences, based on any dietary concerns that you have. And it's just an awesome resource to really start getting yourself organized. And the next thing is a prepping matrix by Prepperlink, and I'm gonna have a downloadable PDF file in the show notes today that you could, for free, that you guys can download and check it out. But it's an awesome visual map, and I'm a real visual guy. I gotta have some kind of blueprint to help me understand and put all the pieces together. And it goes in. It's really comprehensive. It goes into food prep, goes into firearms, goes into safety, medical, dental, even. I mean, it by no means covers every single thing, but it is a fantastic starting point. So go check that out, download it, print it out, whatever you got to do, keep it on your phone. And you can start really chipping away at the different categories. Get yourself organized, So those hopefully are going to be 2 really awesome starting points for you guys today. And again, just take that first step. Go buy a couple extra cans of tuna or whatever, shelf stable goods that you need. Whether it's pickles or whether it's definitely go for high fat, high protein. You're not going to live on pickles for a month, but having some diversity in there. Make sure that you have stuff that you actually enjoy eating. If you hate lentils, don't go buy a 50-pound bag of lentils that you're going to be stuck eating in an emergency. You're going to be pissed off, stressed out, and your stomach's going to fucking hurt. So don't do that to yourself. Take it slow, take it a step at a time. And then when you have extra and you're not scraping by, go in for that bigger shop. Go get 10 extra cans of each thing. Even though cans of good organic food is outrageous now. It's dude, I was at the store the other day and I was picking up some canned salmon. It was $3.79 per little can of salmon, and I'm talking they're the little disc puck cans. It's not some massive can. So it takes time, man. That's the point. It takes time. So the sooner that you can start, the better. The best time to start is yesterday. It's last week. It's last year. But the next best time to start is right now. No one can start this journey for you. It's all on you. There's nobody that's going to come and save you and hold your hand and walk you through it. I'm here. There are others here who are doing our best to be guides and to put out information and lay a map. But I can't come into your house and help you organize a system to grow your food pantry. I can't create a system for you to start figuring out how much money you can afford to put away. That has to be something that you take the initiative to do. And once you do it, you're taking steps to be more responsible, to be more resilient, and to be more prepared. So that's it for today, guys. I think that's gonna wrap it up. I'm almost to work, so I'm gonna get going here. But today, one thing you can do for me, man, if you enjoy the show, if you enjoy what we're putting out, if you think that this is an important message that others need to hear, share it. And you don't just put it on your story where it's gonna disappear in 24 hours. Send it person to person. Text it to a friend or to a family member who's just waking up, who's you think would benefit from hearing this stuff. I'd appreciate it too if you want to put it on your story. That's great. I'm not telling you not to, but the best thing, how this really is going to spread, is from person to person. Real relationships that we build with each other. And as always, man, please, wherever you're listening, take a second, give the show a rating or a written review. It really helps other people like yourself find us. If you think that the stuff we're saying is important, hit that button, hit those stars, write a quick sentence. I know it's a pain in the ass, but it helps me out way more than you know. And until then, guys, keep on learning, keep on prepping, keep on building what thrives in changing times.